with steroids and illegal performance enhancers.
And different standards of evidence on those names, too. I mean, this isn't proof that any or all of them are necessarily using. Some have admitted to it, but the players just wouldn't cooperate with George Mitchell. So as he would contact them to say, so-and-so says he shot you up with anabolic steroids, they wouldn't comment.
Hardly any of the current players would cooperate at all. He asked them to come in, give their side of the story. They all refused, virtually all refused.
The only one who did was Jason Giambi. That was after he made the comments in USA Today saying, hey, I'm talking about the mistakes I made and I messed up, that kind of thing. I'm paraphrasing here. But that was the only one, and he only did it after basically Bud Selig kind of forced him to go talk to Mitchell, and he only discussed his own knowledge of himself. And that's one thing, too. David Segui went in the paper recently, a 15-year major leaguer with several different teams, and he said the same thing. He said, you know, I admit that I've used steroids, I've used different enhancers, but I'm not going to talk about the vast knowledge I have of other players because I don't want to discuss their business. So really, no players came forward. And Kirk Radomski and the investigation into the Florida Anti-Aging Clinic that's still an ongoing probe into illegal prescriptions by the New York State's Attorney's Office, those are really the two major sources of information for this 400-page report that George Mitchell had to go on.
And just to remind folks who might not know who Kurt Radomski is, he's a former Mets clubhouse attendant who, as he would tell it, kind of ran a drug business on the side. He even had a sub-distributor. And that man, Brian McNamee, is the person who says he worked with Roger Clemens over time as well. But Radomski is the one who has the canceled checks. I mean, when you go through the report, it's so amazing to see these baseball players' signatures on a check written to this guy, and I wonder what they would say about what they were paying him for. There he is right there. We were just able to pick up video right there. Kurt Radomski provided a treasure trove of information to George Mitchell.
We should say, too, if I can jump in very quickly, that Bud Selig, the baseball commissioner, is going to have his news conference at 4:30 Eastern time this afternoon. So those of us who are waiting to see what baseball is going to say, we look forward to hearing his comments.
What do you think about players near the end of their career? Like, I mean, Clemens and Gary Sheffield, some of the players that have been named who are still active. What do you think happens to them? Well,
that's a good question. I mean, you know, we're in the off season. I mean, we're still about 2 months, less than 2 months away, right about 2 months away from training camp beginning. Some may choose to walk away, but then again, some may not. I mean, it's too early to tell.
How widespread was the use and how good is the evidence? Here's what George Mitchell said just a few moments ago. He said it was a collective failure by everyone.
There was a collective failure to recognize the problem as it emerged and to deal with it early on. As a result, an environment developed in which illegal use became widespread. Knowledge and understanding of the past are essential if the problem is to be dealt with effectively in the future. But being chained to the past is not helpful. Baseball does not need and cannot afford to engage in a never-ending search for the name of every player who ever used performance-enhancing substances.
And George Mitchell says he's really concerned about the kids who look up to all of these baseball players.
And the players who didn't commit any violation at all, and how unfair it is to them.
Right.
You know, here's a guy who made the team. He's using steroids. I'm on the bench. You know, that...
Yeah, well, it's that competitive edge that comes up, and we've talked about recently with Marion Jones and the situation. She finally came clean and said, hey, listen, I did this, and I deserve, you know, whatever's coming to me. And the question was asked some other time, you know, why would you do that? I'm like, well, you know, with athletes, with so many people, you want to try to find that line.
Yeah.
And the question is, at what point do you cross the line?
Yeah.
I mean, do you go over the line and do you cheat? And you're in that person's shoes if everyone else is doing it.
Where's the fair play? Right. I want to remind our viewers of some things coming up. Major League Baseball will have its say 4:30. Bud Selig will actually be speaking. We hope to hear from the players' representative, Doug Fear, at 6 o'clock. Also, CNN.com has complete coverage. We'll give you all the names of the people who have been discussed in George Mitchell's report, so please check that out if you have any interest in going a little bit further into this. Some 20 months to put this report together. Millions of dollars. We'll have continuing coverage after this break. You're with Headline News. Please stick around.
Who did steroids in baseball? And does anyone really care? Glenn Beck, radio and TV phenomenon and now #1 best-selling author. Headline News, tonight, 7 and 9 Eastern. The desperate search for Stacy Peterson continues. As investigators narrow the search, what will they find tonight? Nancy Grace, Headline News, tonight, 8 and 10 Eastern. Tonight, Britney, Paris, Hasselhoff, it's the ultimate claim to shame. Showbiz Tonight names the most controversial celebrity of the year. Tonight at 11 Eastern on Headline News.
Gentlemen and lady, debate is combat, but Your weapons are words.
Academy Award winner Denzel Washington awakens the spirit in an underdog debating team in The Great Debaters. Now you can determine the most spirited debates of 2007 online at cnn.com/topics. Take the poll and you could win a trip for two to the Republican or Democratic debate in California as the candidates battle for the presidency. Sponsored by The Great Debaters, in theaters Christmas Day.
Larry King tonight. The baseball steroid investigation, the Stacey Peterson case. Celebrity judges take on the day's hottest topics. Larry King live tonight, 9 Eastern on CNN.
Retailers don't want you to see the information about to be disclosed.
Hi, I'm Tony Galata. This is my wife, Carrie Galata. This is our house, my wife's dream house. And we furnish most everything in this house with products from Direct Buy. We purchased the breakfast table and chairs. We looked at that table in some other places.
They ran around $3,500 and we picked it up for around $1,500.
If you're building, remodeling, or simply redecorating a room, there's now a way to buy virtually everything you need at prices you never imagined possible.
We've saved, I think, well over $20,000.
Just on our kitchen alone, we saved almost $10,000.
It adds up to about a $30,000 to $40,000 savings overall.
Call the number on your screen now to receive your free insider's guide to buying direct. Plus, you'll also receive a free visitor's pass for an exclusive tour of your local Direct Buy showroom. Call right now to get started buying the Direct Buy way. Stop paying retail and become part of Direct Buy, the private members-only showroom and design center. Don't wait another minute. Pick up the phone and call now.
Some of the biggest names in baseball cheated. A doping report shakes the major leagues, who it names as users.
It's just amazing that it did not fall all the way down.
Nearly 100 feet in the air and no place to go but down. Find out how this car got into the mess and what happened to the driver. Plus, a lush historical romance leads the pack in the first round of Hollywood Award nominations. We're going to show you the actors, actresses, movies, and TV shows up for this year's Golden Globes. Hi, everybody, and welcome to CNN Headline News. I'm Chuck Roberts. Here among the stories we're following. George Mitchell, the former Senate Majority Leader, has completed a multi-million-dollar 20-month investigation of the extent of steroid use, performance-enhancing drugs used by Major League Baseball players who today were named formally for the first time. Here's part of what George Mitchell just told reporters and the world.
There was a collective failure to recognize the problem as it emerged and to deal with it early on. As a result, an environment developed in which illegal use became widespread. Knowledge and understanding of the past are essential if the problem is to be dealt with effectively in the future. But being chained to the past is not helpful. Baseball does not need and cannot afford to engage in a never-ending search for the name of every player who ever used performance-enhancing substances.
Let's go to Alan Chernoff, who joins us live in New York. He's been covering this all day. Alan?
That's right, Chuck. Some real big names mentioned in this report, and the report actually does run 400 pages or so, including attachments, documents, some checks, canceled checks, actually giving some evidence that all of this actually did occur. Let me just give you some of the headline names. These ball players who are mentioned as having evidence, the investigation found some evidence that they either were receiving steroids or human growth hormone. Roger Clemens, the 7-time Cy Young winner, the pitcher for the New York Yankees. Andy Pettitte, his friend from the New York Yankees. The two of them shared a trainer, and according to the report, they did receive some of these materials from that trainer. Also, Jason Grimsley, the former pitcher. David Justice, the all-star former outfielder. Mo Vaughn, the all-star former infielder. And Miguel Tejada, the shortstop, all mentioned in this report among several dozen names. Really is just a devastating day for baseball, no doubt about it. At the same time, Mr. Mitchell said that he does not want to punish. He wants, he said, the commissioner to basically move forward from here. He said that there really should be nobody looking back. He wants to move forward, give baseball a chance to clean up. And he said the way that you do that is you toughen up the drug testing. You actually make it much tougher, more accountable. You test year-round, you have transparency, and you hire an independent agency to do that testing. Right now, Major League Baseball oversees the testing. So that's basically what George Mitchell found after his 20-month investigation conducted by him and members of his law firm as well. Chuck?
Yes, and he said more than half of those named were already retired and beyond the reach of any punishment from the Major League Baseball officials, including Bud Selig, whom we hope to hear from in about an hour and a half. We'll see if he takes George Mitchell's recommendation and moves forward rather than tries to punish those who are still playing the game and who may have been users. Our thanks to Alan Chernoff. Larry Smith has been following all this with rapt attention. Larry, talk about what were you surprised most about? I was surprised that there was very little cooperation by the current players, very little cooperation by the players' union, and as he said rather cynically, he expects both sides will continue to dig in their heels even further.
Yeah, that's the one thing I think that that came out of that. Here's someone who was, brought by baseball to make this investigation, make it happen, and in 20 months and millions of dollars spent, find out exactly what is the true sense of steroids here. And after all that time and money, he says, I still really, truly don't know. This is just the tip of the iceberg. I was really surprised as this material in the past 12 hours, 24 hours really began to kind of come out, some things leaking out a little bit, that he was able to get this much information, considering how tight-lipped everyone was. All the players union, only Jason Giambi, a former MVP, was the only one who talked to him, and even he only talked to him only about himself, not about anybody else. But here's the issue that really he has. He did take baseball to task and said, hey, before 2002, baseball was more concerned with the finances more than they were the steroid situation. And here's the problem that baseball has to really kind of come to grips with and say, this is a problem. Jose Guillen, okay, played with the Seattle Mariners this year. On the day that he was suspended for 15 days, okay, for
just a couple weeks ago.
For reports, exactly, right. Reports of receiving a human growth hormone, right. He finalized a 3-year, $36 million contract with the Kansas City Royals on the same day. So when you're a player, you look at that and you say, well, I give up 15 days, right. But I just got a $12 million a year salary. There has to be some kind, and that's because you look at this list. It's not just the biggest names. You have MVPs in there. You have Cy Young Award winners. You have all-star players, but also lesser-known players whose careers were more nondescript. I mean, it runs the gamut. And he talked about really seeing in his conversations there was a great pressure among those lesser players, the players who were not stars, to use to get bigger, to get better, to get the stats, to become bigger names and get the bigger money.
We're going to talk to George Vesey, a New York Times columnist, in just a couple minutes. I want to ask you one more thing. Let's put a bracket around this. This is sort of the steroid decade that we're trying to bring an end to. From the fans' perspective, Major League Baseball revenue shot up last year. They had a hugely profitable year.
$6 billion.
So does that tell you the fans are ready to sort of forgive and they've already processed this information? They've dealt with it already psychologically?
Well, that's a great question.
We don't know.
There's certainly, we don't know. But at the same time, 1998 was the year McGuire and Sosa, by the way, whose names are not a part of this. The only time they were mentioned in this, by the way, was to mention that they refused to speak to George Mitchell in this. So, yeah.
All right.
George Vesey is here, I think, to talk with us.
All right. George Vesey, New York Times columnist. We couldn't have a better guest on this subject. If you can hear me, thank you for your time, sir. Anything you want to highlight from the George Mitchell briefing?
Well, obviously his conclusion was that it's time for baseball to move on and to get better drug testing in the future and to avoid the kind of scandal that it's had in the last decade. If people take his moving on seriously, and I'm sure that baseball and the union will be glad to move on, then the question is, how can they stop this from happening again?
Turning the entire drug testing program over to an outside agency, good idea? What do you think? Is it workable?
Absolutely a good idea. You don't let the rabbit handle a lettuce, and I don't think you let Major League Baseball and the Players Association handle drug testing.
Do you think anybody's going to take a big fall among the current players?
Well, if you mean a fall in terms of suspension, I don't see any kind of raw meat in there that tells me what the commissioner could do to arbitrarily throw out one guy without throwing out others. But I have to admit, we've all just been handed the report.
Sure.
That's really up to the commissioner. More to the point is, how will people react in rooting for teams and how they react to individuals? Will it make people like Barry Bonds or Roger Clemens or any of the others? You know, the Andy Pettit's name I saw in there somewhere. So will people like them less, ultimately voting for the Hall of Fame the way McGuire was whacked his first year of eligibility? I think that's one tangible, not just of the press's reaction, but of the public's reaction, is voting for the Hall of Fame. But there could be other things. Does it influence somebody's outside income? Would Clemens be anathema to any team next year? Well, why wasn't he anathema the last couple of years? I mean, he's kind of been talking out of both sides of his mouth. But we now see him pretty much as what he was, injecting. Can you ban him from baseball retroactively? I don't think so.
George Vesey, thanks for your insights. I appreciate it. You just walked out of that news conference. We appreciate your time, sir, very much. Good to see you, sir.
My pleasure.
All right, what sort of legal trouble could be in store for the players named in the report? Ivan Golde is a sports attorney who's represented Major League Baseball players as well as NFL players, I believe. He joins us now from San Francisco. Bring us your thoughts on the legal aspects of this.
There are not really many legal aspects to this. There won't be any lawsuits. I know Roger Clemens is upset, but who is he going to sue? Major League Baseball? George Mitchell? This report is basically about a former New York Mets bat boy who became a steroid dealer. He's the foundation of this report, and a few other trainers. This report, the information in this report has been known for years. The steroid scandal in baseball has been around for years. The owners knew about it, Major League Baseball knew about it, and the players all knew about it, obviously. It was a big money grab. This is just sort of window dressing. Nothing is going to come of this. George Mitchell was right. Let's forget about everything and move forward. Everyone knows. It's been documented everywhere. Legal action, truth is a defense. I don't think too many players are going to sue over this report. This information has been widely known for years.
Do you think it will have any effect on the upcoming perjury case against Barry Bonds?
Not really. That's a totally separate case, totally separate evidence. That's in federal court. This is an investigation. This is a quote-unquote report done by George Mitchell's law firm, and this was ordered by the commissioner. This is just a report he's done. He's compiled his own materials, his own information, and his own report. It's an independent report. It's not going to prosecute or exonerate Barry Bonds, though Barry Bonds is mentioned in there. We all know 50, 75%, if not more, of Major League Baseball players were using steroids. It's a serious advantage. There's so much money. If you have a chance to make $5 or $10 million a year and taking steroids gives you the advantage, you're darn right you're going to try it. High school. Now, one key in that report, which was very important, was kids. And Mitchell referenced kids, that are young people can't look to these professional athletes and say, look, the way to make it is to take steroids. That is a real problem. That is something we must address. These ball players must go into the community and tell these kids, no, steroids is wrong. Because if you're in junior high school or high school, you say, my only chance is to use steroids. You've got a whole culture of young people in all sports using steroids, and that is a real problem.
So you don't see Bud Selig cherry-picking current players, picking a couple of them out just to make an example of them, punishing them, and risking a lawsuit?
Not at all, because the commissioner's office, the owners, and the players were all part of this. After 1994, the players' strike, the fans were disgusted with baseball. What happened? They needed to liven it up. They allowed steroids. All parties did. The game got funner, more action, more offense. The fans came back in record numbers. More ballparks were built. Everybody is culpable here. It would be irresponsible for the commissioner to suspend these players when all parties were a part of this steroid era.
Plus, it would interrupt the revenue stream, wouldn't it?
Absolutely.
Go ahead and finish your thought. I'm sorry.
I'm just going to say the commissioner should accept what happened, take responsibility. The owners need to take responsibility. The players need to take responsibility. Talk to the kids. Make sure we don't have a whole generation of steroid users trying to make it to the big time. Please. And the players, they all used it. They know it. They did it. And they will continue. Believe me, the technology in steroid use is advanced. There are masking agents, and it will continue to go on. Believe me, the testing, as the report says, just scratches the surface of identifying steroid users.
Do you have any clients involved in this?
I really do not want to comment on any of my clients involved with using steroids at all. Please.
All right. Ivan Golde, it's been great talking to you.